Buenos dias, Alistair, and thank you for joining us today at Business Spotlight Series. Today, I am excited to introduce Alastair Watson, MD of STAKAM, the craft of chemistry. Welcome, Alistair.
Oh, thank you very much, Javier. Buenos dias, good to see you.
Buenos dias, very nice accent you have. So, Alistair, first of all, what is STAKAM about? What do you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So we are a small chemical company based in Scotland, and where we're using that term craft, what we're meaning is that there's a handmade element to it, and we're creating chemicals for customers based on either what they want or aspects that we know that they'll require, and I guess we work closely with these customers to ensure that we meet their needs and requirements.
Brilliant. And how do you end up here? Is this something when you were at school, you fell in love with chemistry and you wanted to run a business in this sector? How did it happen?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe we split the question down. I mean, when I was at school, I always enjoyed the science side of things, chemistry, physics, biology, pretty much the same level at all of them. Not outstanding, but reasonable, I would say. Preferred them to subjects like English and history, which I found very difficult. So I guess I was always interested in doing something with science. In terms of the business side of things, I always thought I would have my own business, really from a very, very young age. I think I would have thought 12, 13.
Wow.
A lot of the friends that I had, parents, would speak to me about certain things. And I did chemistry at Glasgow Uni. My first choice had been dentistry, but I didn't get the grades to do dentistry. So I went to university at 17. And I did chemistry because I enjoyed studying it. I found it the one that I enjoyed working at the most. I wouldn't say I was always studying very hard when I was at school. So I'm going to, my sort of philosophy was pick something that I didn't mind studying, and that's where chemistry fitted in. I enjoyed the subject. I thought it was a good subject. There was lots of different nuances to it, and you could at times get a little bit lost in it. So that was really why I ended up sort of going for the chemistry and the business side of things. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have necessarily known at a young age I was going to have a chemical business, but for sure I was always looking at doing at some stage my own thing, if you like.
Brilliant. Well, I've never come across, most entrepreneurs, business owners I talk to, most of them never did exceedingly well at the school or enjoy studying. So I think that's part of the entrepreneurial gene, it's brilliant. So tell us a little bit about the journey then. So, I mean, you've done quite a few things before you set up your own business, right? You had a long journey. So can you give us some highlights of between you left the school or university and you set up your own business? Because there are many people there who are thinking about running their own business, and they would like to hear the journey. How do you, were there some stepping stones? How did it happen?
Yeah, so in terms of the sort of the highlights or the sort of key milestones or the things that had happened, after I finished university, I got a job as a chemist for the water board. So that put me in the first job, if you like, of a chemist inside a lab, gaining some experience. And of course, you land your first job after university. It's a proper job. You get paid something that's a reasonable return. So that's a sort of a key moment for you. What I did at that time was I saved up enough money to go to Australia for a gap year, and I went traveling for a year, knowing that I was leaving the job that I thought I could come back to. I mean, I was young. I was only like 20 years old, so you're not thinking the way that your parents were. My dad had his own business. My dad was a trained accountant, but he also bought and sold antique collectible records. So he always liked having his own business. He'd worked on sort of the corporate side. He was quite high up in the electricity board. He was an area manager, and with that came, the sort of the responsibility of looking after staff, etc., P&L, that type of thing. But when I was in Australia, my dad got diagnosed with a type of cancer called multiple myeloma. So that then did two things. One, well, we thought it was he only had months to live, not years. So that ended the gap year short by about 2 months. And then the second thing was my mum was worried that all these records, of which my dad probably had 100,000 records, just to
Really?
you know how many.
Wow. What year are we talking?
This was 2003.
Okay.
So this is sort of that sort of time. So it's probably a couple of years after graduating. But really, my mum's primary concern was, one, my dad might not have long to live, and secondly, what am I going to do with all these records? So I came back really to help get into the records and get them sort of sold and all the rest of it. Now, my dad managed to get into remission for a number of years, and I worked with him in the records, and I ended up doing records with my dad. We were partners 50-50 doing the record business. And by that stage, I quite enjoyed it. But I got to the point where I was a bit bored after doing it for 5 years. I kind of knew a lot about records, and it was more my dad's thing, if you like. And then at that time, we'd had a go at setting up a building company. We built a couple of houses, but it wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy the business. That one wasn't for me. So I decided then, look, I need to really use my chemistry degree. And I want to go and get a job and build some experience in it. And then I went and took a job down in England, 2008, worked for a chemical company, was their UK account manager. So that got me doing business experience. Good experience, business to business transactions, getting to know about a new industry, the chemical industry. So, and really at that age, you're just like a sponge. You're just trying to learn as much as you can. Try and build your own network, understand how things work. And of course, you have the adjustments to make, going from working with my dad to suddenly you're in a company environment. Certain things you can't do, you have to readjust. And then at 2012, I did an MBA. And then after the MBA, I then went and worked in Aberdeen in a technical sales role and a business as a business line manager in a very technical area using chemistry. So between those I ended up 3 different chemical companies since I started 2008, taking me through to 2016 when I set STAKAM up. That gave me a bit of a foundation, and seeing what worked well in these companies, what didn't, how did they work, how did they make money, how did they charge for things. Those things can take you quite a while to figure out the bits of the company that make them sustainable, make them good. And from there on in, it was a case for me. How do I try and learn the elements that those companies all did well, because they had some fantastic points with them. They had obviously great individuals as well, but all of them had a business case for existing. And for me, it was, well, if we set this new company up, what am I going to try and take from those bits that they did well? How can I replicate them? And what's the niches that I think we can do? Because I'm not really, I didn't really have none of the companies I moved for, I migrated business from one to another. So each of those 3 chemical companies all did different things. It wasn't a case of I went from one to another and stole all their customers. And the same for STAKAM. It's completely different what we are doing than the other ones.
When you're working in those companies, you said you were kind of watching to see how do these people make money. That takes you now to stepping back from the system within which you are working. And were you already thinking, one day I will run my own business, so I want to see the mechanics of how a business operates?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there's a couple of things you're doing. I think. I mean, certainly someone in my shoes. You chemical sector. I think would be very hard to leave university and become an MD of a chemical company, set one up and become it. You could maybe do it if you were university spin out. So you worked at university, did say a PhD. They created a company based on your PhD. You then took that technology and you spun it out. Yes, you could find yourself as MD or CEO of a chemical company. But the route that I've taken, it would be very, very difficult just to decide, I'm setting up a chemical business. Now, I had business experience with my dad and the records and the property. I'd had a couple of other ventures along the way that had, I would say, failed, for want of a better word. When I'm looking at these, when I'm working in these companies, first of all, you need to do a good job, right? That's our the first goal is we need to do a good job for where we work. So we have there's a competitive element with, people in like the kind of thing I do, there's a competitive part to yourself, but also to your work for. But there's also the intrigue of the areas in a company that are the highly profitable things. Every company has it. They have bits that they make a lot of money on, and they have bits that they make no money on. And how they treat those two is never the same in two companies. Some companies want to kill all the stuff that makes them no money. Other ones don't even want to do the analysis. So those things they're intriguing. And when you first walk into a company, you have no idea what makes that company money. They can tell you at the interview, but you don't know until you've got in there and had a look. And I always found that an intriguing area. What are the bits of this company that make them a lot of money? And does the company all know it? Because sometimes they still don't know. Even if you try and explain it, they don't look at it that way. Yeah. It's an intriguing area.
I always ask a question when working with clients: what is the 20% of your products that make you 80% of your money, revenue and profit, and who are the 20% of your clients who make you 20%, 80% of your revenue or profit?
Yes. Yeah, and it's not an easy question to answer, is it? There's sometimes
it's having your data,
yes.
tracking your data and regularly. So some companies do know, and some companies they need to dig the data out, and yes, brilliant. You mentioned when we spoke last time about, I think if I understood you well, you finished your MBA, you had no job and 2 kids. That's quite a interesting moment, right? How do you? Is that when you then moved to Aberdeen?
Yeah, it was a very interesting moment. And so I think when we first spoke, I let you know I was doing an MBA for when I was 17. I remember one of my friends' dad saying to me, "You need to do an MBA," and I got home and I remember quizzing my dad, "What's an MBA? What does this mean?" Etc. etc. So I was always going to do an MBA, right? Whether or not it was going to be good in the end or not good, I was always going to do one. It was just, and sometimes there's certain things you just have to do anyway. Looking back, did I need it? Don't know, but it was certainly no regrets. But the interesting thing on the MBA was I was working for this Italian chemical company, and they had an MD who I got on very well with, right? Very, very well with him. And I'd said to him, "Look, I'm wanting to do an MBA, but I would like to do it part-time and while I'm working." And he said, yeah, I think that's a good idea for you. I think that'll be good. I think you should do it. He left the company, came to retirement, and they got a new MD in. And this MD, I said to my wife before I'd gone into work that day, I said, "I don't want to do the MBA anymore part-time. I want to just do it full-time. If I do it part-time, I'm not going to do it properly. I'm not going to concentrate on it. I'm going to have to do it. It's going to be a lot of work, So I said to her before I went into work, I said, I think this new MD might not be supportive of this. So just so you know, I might need to quit my job." So
are you okay with that?
Yes, are you okay with that? Yeah. So she sort of said, "Well, you need to do what you need to do. You need to do, what's best, blah, 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 blah." Well, spoke to the new MD, and I said to him, look, I'd had it approved to do my MBA part-time, but I really think I should do it full-time. The one in Bradford, I can do it over 10 months. It's an accelerated one. So would you be okay with me doing that? And could I come back would you keep my job open for me? He then says to me, well, I can see why this is good for you, but what's in it for us? And I said, I said, well, I know the product, I know the company, I'm going to leave, I'm going to do an MBA, I'm going to come back with the MBA behind me, but I'm also going to know the product and I'm going to be in an elevated position. I think it's good for you and I think it's good for us. And he then said, no, I don't think it's good for us. And I said, okay. I said, so it sounds to me like you're giving me two options. And one of those is I just quit my job and do the MBA over 10 months. And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, fine, then I quit. And I left and I went and spoke to him. He wasn't my boss, by the way. He was the MD of the company. I went and spoke to my boss, who was director in the company, and said, look, just spoken with the new MD, Chris, and he's basically given me the ultimatum, so I've quit, just so you knew. And he said, I wish you'd come and spoken to me first. And I said, but if that's his attitude, how would it have made a difference? If that's how he thinks, then it's just not correct. And it doesn't, and it's okay because I'd spoken to Tara before I'd come into work, so it's fine. And basically, it was not leaving necessarily on a bad term, but that was me.
You left basically your job to do the MBA. That was
Yeah. I mean, he was saying to me, why don't you go to, why are you doing it at Bradford? Why don't you go to London School of Economics? And I said, because I can't afford it. I said, I'd need to have like 50, 60 grand a year to do it there. I'd just never be able to do that. So when I was doing my MBA, there was quite a lot of pressure on me because obviously I'd given up the job. But it did allow me to concentrate on it. I did some records part-time to keep some money coming in for us, because at that time I had one child, and then one was on the way. But I did feel under a wee bit of pressure when I finished, because that was the first time effectively I was doing, suddenly I'm unemployed with a house, cars, wife, kids.
That was a very brave move, and I say this,
very stressful, and it really, the stress was, it was postponed stress, because you knew until the course is finished, you're not unemployed. It's only when the course finishes you're unemployed.
Correct, yeah.
Then you felt the pressure.
What year did you finish the MBA?
2012.
Okay, so that was 4 years after the credit crunch. So the market was in a better place, Yeah, no, that resonates a lot with me. I mean, I did an MBA as well, and I decided to do full-time, the same reason as you.
Okay.
To focus on it, and I did it full-time. With your MBA, you went abroad, you told me?
Yes. Yeah, did one module with, well, the other thing interesting doing the MBA was
Barcelona.
I went to Barcelona, but nobody in the UK was doing MBA at Bradford. As an English or Scottish or British person doing, first of all, nobody did full-time MBAs. They all did part-time ones. So I was the only British person doing a full-time MBA. All of them, 90% were from India. So it was a really odd scenario who I was doing it with, but very good. It was an enjoyable experience. And one of the courses I chose to do was in Barcelona, finance course, a very good course actually. It was enjoyable, and we went out and did the elective. So I went over there for a week with two other Indian ladies that were on it that I did it with, and it was enjoyable.
Brilliant. So you got your MBA. You had a few years of experience under your belt from 3 different chemical companies. You had sales experience, which is very important. And then you went off in 2016. You set up your current company, right?
Yes.
How's the journey been so far? So my first question is, when you set up the business, have things turned out the way you thought 9 years ago?
Not fully, but in the high level stuff, yes. The journey to get there is obviously convoluted. 2016, so although on paper the company was set up, the company really didn't have any activities till 2019. The first bit was, in your spare time, if you like, putting together a business plan. That takes you about a year to write properly, maybe even 18 months. You're looking at the different aspects. Where are you going to do the business from? What equipment do you need to buy? Can you afford to buy anything at the moment? Positioning for certain things. So those first few years, there's very little actual business to be done. What I would say was that I guess the principles of setting the company up was to be independent, to offer chemistry that was more complex than anybody else close by, and try and find a way of doing things that people need that's closer to where it's being used. So if we were supplying to Aberdeen, try and be closer than our nearest competitor. Those things haven't changed. I think originally I thought maybe you could break even after year 3. So those things never happened. It took longer than that. And the other thing that I thought originally was that I could create this idea of having these multiple craft chemical companies all around the world. So like the way you have a craft beer facility that's making small batch to batch craft recipes, my vision for the chemical business was that I could create this craft chemical company and go and have multiple branches all around the world where they were tailored to whatever was required. That hasn't happened. Yeah, so that's something I would say that in the original business plan, I thought that could happen. I thought you could have, STAKAM Scotland, STAKAM England, STAKAM Nigeria, STAKAM Saudi Arabia, all these STAKAMs all over the world delivering things that were required for that specific region. That aspect has never come through. I still think it's a nice image.
Is that still on the table, or?
Maybe, but for a start, doing business overseas is so complicated. So at the moment, we're doing mainly UK business. So it's not off the table. It's just that early vision, if you like. That's one that's not come through. We've had a go at doing things. We've done elements in North Africa. We've worked with a company in Saudi Arabia, but they've not progressed at the speed that we would have liked things to have done. Apart from that, big picture stuff's not too far off. Obviously, as touched on earlier, the road of getting there is very bumpy. It doesn't happen like you write out in the business plan.
It's not linear. It's never linear.
No.
Yes.
No, in fact, at times it's the opposite of linear. It's maybe more like it's more like a staircase, really. You might, the first 3 years, you might be on the first step, and then something happens and you get to step 2. But yes,
so we have roller coasters and staircases.
Yes.
Brilliant. What was the biggest challenge you've had to face to build the business, to run the business? What is one of the main challenges you've had?
I would say that always your 2 challenges are cash and staff. Yeah, these are always in the startup. When you start up, nobody wants to give you any credit, so that's your first challenge. You can't buy any chemical without paying for it up front. And a lot of the time, the customers you want to pay you after X number of days. So cash is a big issue. The other thing is, of course, to gain the best purchase price, you need to buy the biggest quantity. So those 2 things are working against you to start with, because at first you can't buy a big quantity because you don't have any money to buy it.
Yes.
So cash is always a big challenge. Especially when you're trying to do it off your own accord. So we've not really gone out for a lot of funding from banks or taken out big loans. You've got, I mean, we're really, I'd say, very entrepreneurial in the way that we go about getting cash into the company. I think is something we're different to a lot of other companies. So cash is one thing, and staff is the other thing. When you're a small company, you have to have really good staff, because you're asking them to do more than they would normally do. If they're working in a bigger organization, they're more boxed into certain attributes. That just doesn't work for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say that to have good staff is very, very important, particularly for small companies, right? So when you recruit, what are the attributes? You already said one, they have to do more things than usual, right? What attributes do you look for to work in a small company like yours?
Yeah, I'd say, so by no means is this one of my strengths, is recruitment. I'm not.
It is or it isn't?
No, I don't think it is. No, I think I'm a bit. I'm very much on the gut feel. I mean,
yes.
if we didn't have to have any contracts or anything like that, it's not a big area for me. But gut feel is, without question, the most important attribute from any staff member is attitude. That is it. If you can get the right attitude, the rest takes care of itself. I would far rather take somebody that doesn't have maybe the level of expertise or experience, but has a good attitude.
Yeah, you can train. You can train skill, but not attitude.
Yeah, definitely. With the best staff that we have, their sort of attitude is, that's the bit that's second to none.
I was talking to a business owner who was complaining about. He said, Javier, how do you motivate people? And I say, you don't. You recruit motivated people. To motivate them, you recruit motivated people, right? To motivate them, how do you motivate? Well, you don't. The bypass to that in my head, okay, I may be wrong on this, but is if you connect them to your vision, if you have a compelling vision of where you want to take the business to, and there is a big why behind, this is what we do here, does that, make you tick? If they can connect to you to the vision of the business, then they self-motivate themselves. Your vision motivates them, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say that's probably for me the first few years, staff is not the concern. The concern for the first few years is cash to survive and having a credible business case. Your business case is only justified by a customer. You can write the best business plan in the world. The only one that matters is a customer prepared to pay for anything.
A spreadsheet can take any numbers you throw at it.
Yeah.
You can increase the gross profit, on a spreadsheet anytime.
Absolutely. You can make it as linear as you like. The staff side of things is a very interesting area for if you think of the journey that we're on. Maybe it's a bit of a cliche, but there's the journey of the business, and there's also the journey of the position I'm in, the MD role, and you can't. You get a lot of companies that are very good one-man bands and things, et cetera, et cetera. So there comes a point where if you want to be of a certain size, you can't do it all yourself. Then it becomes, you can't employ yourself because that's kind of weird. So you have to find these people that come into your organization, your key roles. Us at the moment, key roles would be sales and BD, business development of the company is key, always going to be key, right? Because it's not about what's today, it's what's tomorrow. So and things change, customer needs change, and all the rest of it. The technology side is critical for us. The chemistry side, I explained at the start, I'm not the best chemist, so I'm not going to take that role. And then you've got the operational aspect, actually getting stuff made. This is key. And then you've got roles that are the ones that keep everything, allow everything to work. So for us, that would be the sort of the role of the office manager. So between office manager, technical manager, sales director, and your operational, they're your key things. Now, each of them needs characteristics in them to do their job as well as possible. And I agree with what you're saying. They need to buy into the vision of where it's going. The vision has to be credible. It has to be relatively creative, so that there needs to be something different. You need to have a difference. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes what we're trying to do is maybe not really achievable, but at least it's out there and it exists. And when you do it well, I would say those people in those roles that I mentioned, that you could be a fly in the wall and they will portray STAKAM, right? They have it. They might word it different than I would or whatever, but they get it, And the first thing is we deliver, and that's the first thing. If we always will say, yes, we can do something, we don't always have the answers, but we will work hard to figure it out. And each of them, if you like, have bought into that. And what and there's times where it's really hard and you're up against it and all the rest of it, but 9 times out of 10 you deliver, and that's the learning you take. And that's the bit for us, those staff, that attribute. I've jokingly written out a stack 10. It's a 10 commandments of STAKAM. It's not a document I really sort of share to, and lots of it's tongue in cheek, but in there you get the ethos of what it's all about. Occasionally I'll show some of them, and here's what it is, because that, in a nutshell, that's your things. Things like job not done until it's done. That's a lot of people, they don't think like that. They start at 9 and finish at 5. Well, that's not always going to work. It's certainly not going to work in a small organization. Now, it's not that we want them. I don't want people working every day past their contracted hours. It's not about that.
They need to mark in when they have to mark in.
Yes. Yeah. As Andy, our sales director, what he says, which is correct, is you want people that their normal level is high, but when they need to, they step up, and then they can step back down. That's really what you're looking for. Yes. Hopefully over time we get a little bit better at gauging that. But I still, hand on heart, there's people that we've taken on that I didn't know would be as good as they are. Didn't know until they started. There was, and they've exceeded, because that interview, you can't really necessarily tell. Everyone can talk a good game at an interview.
Brilliant. I love the analogy of Jim Collins in the book Good to Great. He talks about getting the right people on the bus, and he talks about having the right people in the right seats. The right people is the people with the right attitude, with the people who have the same values as you have, that makes up the culture of your business. And in the right seats is that they are competent and they get what the job is about. You mentioned before, well, my team, they may do things different, but they get it.
Yes.
They get they may do it differently, but they get it. Right people in the right seats, great analogy. You mentioned about you must have something different. And I guess you were talking about your product or service, right? What would you say sets you apart from others, from the competition? What is kind of unique to you or quirky? I don't know, just to put that.
I think a can-do attitude is different to a lot of the time who you compete with. I think we are taking on more complex chemistry compared to any close by competitor. And when I say complex chemistry, maybe just to sort of break it down a bit, we are doing things that are up an order of complexity compared to simple ingredients mixing. So if you think about baking a cake or something, you've got a few different ingredients that go in there. But in general, give everybody the ingredients and they can make the cake, right? Follow the recipe to make it. What we are doing is we are making a few of the ingredients that go into those ingredients. They're the bits that are very difficult to make.
Wow.
That's the part
ingredients within the ingredients. I like that.
And I think that's the bit for us that really is different. Don't get me wrong, we'll do the simple stuff. It's not about only doing sort of complicated aspects. And I'd say the entrepreneurial approach as well is something that keeps us a little bit different. So I'd say they hopefully they sort of capture some of the things from us.
Candid attitude, complex chemistry, entrepreneurial approach. I like it.
That's it.
I love the example of Southwest Airlines. I don't know, you may have heard of it, but the viewers, maybe they haven't. Is the CEO of Southwest Airlines, was the pioneer of low budget flights, right? No frills. And the three uniques of the Southwest Airlines was the three LFs.
Yep.
Lots of flights, low fares, and lots of fun. Okay. Yep. And the CEO got a letter from Mrs. Johnson saying, "Dear Mr. CEO, I am an 88-year-old lady, and for me the important thing is safety, not having fun when I'm 30,000 feet above the ground." And the CEO replied to her, handwritten letter saying, "Dear Mrs. Johnson, thank you for your feedback. We shall miss you in our flights. You are not our target market, you know." So the three uniques, that's it. And Ryanair, for instance, no company has the same three at the same time. They may take one or two, but not the three. Yeah. Ryanair is lots of flights, low fares, but not lots of fun. I hope they are not watching this. When you fly Ryanair, my heart rate, you know.
Yeah.
It's I thought that was a very, very, tangible example of three uniques. Yeah,
it's very important that, and a lot of I mean, customers one thing, suppliers for companies our size, our supply chain is also can give you a competitive advantage. And I remember asking one supplier, because I'd been in their office and I'd seen their sales board written out, by hand, who it was. And I could see there was no company like us. I said to him, "I don't think we're your ideal client." And he answered me with the stock answer, which was along the lines of, no, all are our ideal. And you can tell we're not. You've written out who they all are. We're not the same. In fact, we're going to be a bit of a pain in the ass for you. You don't really want us as a customer. That's what I'm thinking. You don't really want us as a customer. Now, it's good to know that from the get-go, because you want, just like you've got your good customers, you need to know who your ideal customer is, but you also need to know on supplier who is and who isn't. The pioneering bit, though, that reminded me. So sometimes the most stressful thing for us is you pitch for a new chemical contract, right? And you look like you're going to get it, and they say to you, "We want to come up and we want to do the first pilot plant test of this that you do. We want to witness you doing it," right? So what that means is you're under pressure, because someone like me, I'm not on the tools every day, but when the customer comes up to watch it, I'm going to have to make the chemical. So I'm a bit rusty. And you've also everything's got to look good. But on this one in particular, I decided the only way that we could deliver what the customer wanted was to change the heating system that we had. So in simple terms, the system we used was water, and we could only get to about 90, but the customer needed us at 120. So to get to 120, we'd ordinarily have to put in a new heating system. But there was another way of doing it, which was to switch the liquid inside it and choose one that doesn't boil till 120. Anyway, long story short, I worked out which one to use. And a day before they came up, I switched the system myself. And when I went to test it, I broke the system. And I wanted to cry. Our customer was there, and his customer was about to come up to witness. And he said to me, "Are we still on track?" And I said, "I'm really sorry. I've bust the first system, but don't worry, we've got a second one, and I'm on with it now." And what that gave him was he could see that even when the chips were down, no matter what, we would fight to the finish. And by the time the customer came in, it was running. And the only time he'd run it was in Portugal with a different heating system. And he could tell after the first time we'd run it, it ran better than it ever did in Portugal, even after many, many times. Brilliant. So he then afterwards, he said, "I now know I'm in the right hands because you guys are pioneers." And I thought, that's a great.
Okay, so that's your one of your three uniques: entrepreneurial, pioneer. Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Now, just wrapping up a little bit, what piece of advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
18-year-old self. I think the most important thing is do what you enjoy is the first thing, and the taste of enjoyment is even when things don't go well, that you can still stay on track. They to me are the two tests, that resilience and tenacity, because we know full well that it doesn't all go that well, and that's really the overriding thing. If you've got that with you, then you'll do okay. If you don't have that, it's probably not for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that 18-year-old, if I think of my kids and stuff, I really want them to find things that they enjoy and things that they're prepared to put the hard work and effort into to get to where they need to be.
Yes. So many people talk about resilience,
Yeah.
to bounce back. If you don't bounce back, you are gone.
Yeah. No, and we all, we all have our moments. I've got a great network of people I can speak to that are not necessarily active in the day-to-day, but these are sounding boards that you must feed into, because you can't do it all yourself. For a start, you can't see the wood for the trees. Yes. But the other thing on the bounce back is it's that you've got to take whatever happens, and you've got to find a way of making that in your favor. Yeah. And at times that can take you days to find out what that is. But once you've got it, you will find it. Those things to me are like a test. They're a test for you. Yes. And you've got to you really have got to find a way. And sometimes that involves talking to a lot of different people to get other perspectives. I mean, I've got loads of examples, even in the last few days, weeks. There's things that you've gone and got some an extra voice and things to help you, because you need that, right? It's hard. Yes. Running your own business, there's challenges.
Yeah, as they say, it's quite lonely at the top, right?
Yeah.
So you need definitely. Brilliant. Well, Alistair, it's been fantastic having you on board. A real pleasure to have you with us today, and for sharing your experience and wisdom with such candor. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, no, really appreciate it. Thanks, Javier.
Thank you.